Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, gonna do a review of the Tamdhu Cask Strength Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. This is batch number 5. So as you can imagine, if it's cask strength, not necessarily it has to come from a single cask because these are batches, not single cask. There can be perhaps some variation a little bit in the ABV from cask to cask. I think the most recent release might be either batch 7 or batch 8. Check online. I bought this a while back. It's been sitting on my shelf and I'm just now getting around to it. But before I get into this whiskey, I'm going to tell you about the profile of Tamdhu Distillery, their core range, and this whiskey. Tamdhu Distillery is located in the village of Knockandoo in Banffshire, Scotland. The name Tamdhu comes from a Gaelic meaning little dark hill. Tamdhu Distillery was founded in 1896 by a group of assemblers wishing to engage in the production of their own whiskey. The first malt whiskey was distilled in 1897. The current owner of Tamdhu Distillery is Ian MacLeod Distillers. The distillery's water source is the Tamdhu Spring. They source their malt from Crisp and Simpson's malt producers, which is then processed through a Porteous mill. They have a semi-lauter mash tun, 9 wood washbacks, 6 stills, that is 3 onion-shaped wash stills and 3 spirit stills, and they use a shell and tube condenser. The spirit is then aged in both dunnage and rack warehouses. The Tamdhu Distillery core range. Tamdhu matures its whiskey exclusively in Oloroso sherry casks. The Tamdhu 12-year-old Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey is bottled at 43% alcohol by volume. The Tamdhu 15-year-old Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey is bottled at 46% alcohol by volume. The Tamdhu batch strength Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. The current release is batch number 7, which is bottled at 57.5% alcohol by volume. In this video, I'll be reviewing Tamdhu batch strength Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey, batch number 5. It is bottled at 59.9% alcohol by volume. So I first got into whiskey back in 2016. Since then, I've probably been reviewing 30 to 50 whiskeys a year. Been to Scotland 3 times. Plus, even outside of the whiskey tuber world, I'm tasting all kinds of whiskeys, whether you're at a whiskey bar or you're at some sort of event. After a while of tasting enough bourbons, enough sherry cask, scotches, enough peated whiskeys, enough whatever the category is, enough rye whiskeys, you get a sense in which there is what is sort of typical, standard, common, or might say classic, a classic profile for a bourbon, for a rye, or for a Scotch whiskey. For a bourbon, you're going to talk about some sort of corn note, caramel corn, a lot of vanilla, because it's got that new oak going on, baking spices, cinnamon, nutmeg. Then depending on the mash, you might have some rye note, might have a high rye in there, so you get some black licorice, maybe a little herbal note, and so forth. Maybe get some cherry notes, like cherry cough syrup or something like that. Particularly if it's a wheater, high wheat content, like Maker's Mark, you might get a creamier texture. So the differences in bourbon has to do with the mash bill, the makeup of the mash bill, where they're putting the cask in the rickhouse, and the age. Scotch whiskey, looking at a single malt, you can do variations on cask. How much percentage of the time spent in a bourbon cask, how much time spent in a sherry cask, or you're taking a bourbon cask, spirit, a sherry cask, spirit, and then blending the two to certain percentages to get a profile you want. Is it an advantage warehouse? Obviously, things such as the shape of the still, how are you doing your cuts and the spirit bank, and so on and so forth. And of course, maturation. But even then, even though there are maybe more differences and more variations in Scotch whiskey, there are still, I would say, classic profiles for Scotch whiskeys. And Tamdhu, doing 100% in Old Worcester sherry cask at the distillery, I think you're going to get some classic sherry notes. Even if I hadn't tasted this, just in terms of knowing the profile and knowing how it's aged and the time on it and so forth, you sort of know what to expect before you get to it, and that it's going to fit a certain profile. Now, when a distillery does something a little bit different, whether it's a worm tub versus a shell and tube condenser, or perhaps they do something funky with the still, or obviously peat, there's a huge range of flavors you can get from peat, everything from a chocolatey note to earthy notes to a peppery note. There's a lot of different things you can do with peat, and then how you're doing your cuts and how much you're retaining from the tails, bring in those variations. But still, again, there are classic notes and classic profiles you tend to expect from whiskeys. The goal then is, if you find a particular profile that you like high wheat bourbons, you like high rye bourbons, or particular flavor profiles that you like in there, or with Scotch whiskeys, you really like the big, bold, peaty character, but you like it with a sherry note, the dried black fruit notes, and you like it maybe a little bit of that barbecue, spicy character there. And say, depending on whatever profile you're looking for, then you know what to look for in terms of how they do their casks, how they're doing their malt, and so forth. So, from this whiskey, just based on, if you understand how the whiskey is produced and what cask they're using and so forth and how they're in the malt, you can know by looking at all the various factors that go into the production of the whiskey what you're going to get from this Scotch. And I'm going to say, this is probably just the most stereotypical or classic. Stereotype sounds negative, but I would say it is a classic sherry cask. Fig, dates, raisins, a somewhat fig compote, vanilla, caramel, coffee, a little bit of chocolate, the spicy notes from the sherry cask, a little bit of black pepper, cinnamon, hints of ginger. There's just a touch of the dried orange citrus note like you get in a, I'm going to say, what do you find those in? That's right, Christmas cake. Christmas cake. Everybody likes to say Christmas cake, or if you like Italian cuisine, a panettone roll. A panettone roll is basically the same ingredients, shaped differently, but from Italy rather than from the UK. Even though it's at cask strength, my nose isn't tingling. It isn't getting like that little burny sensation. It's not getting any tingling on the palate. Just under 60 ABV, 58.8 or 0.6, I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, you get a little bit of a numbing sensation for having that high ABV. But it is sweet up front, dries a little bit towards the back end. Dried black fruit notes, fig, dates, raisins, that dried orange character, so that's your citrus note coming in there. A little bit of vanilla. Spice kicks in about the midway back and into the finish. It's got a nice, thick viscosity at this ABV. That's what you're going to expect. Nice, round mouthfeel and a really long finish. Some little bit of caramel in there, a little bit of chocolate in there. This profile is just a classic sherry note. Now, there are some distilleries that are producing single malt Scotch that are known for doing the sherry cask that you're going to pay a heck of a lot more for a cask strength whiskey. You think of the Macallan Classic Cut. This is a Macallan Classic Cut. This is the 2020. I have a 2022 over here as well. This is a 55 ABV. Here in California, these go for $200 to $250 a pop. I picked up the 2022 bottling in Virginia, which has fixed prices, and I was able to pick it up for $129, which is about the same price as the Tamdhu, which is more widely available. I can get this here 125 to 130 bucks, somewhere in that ballpark range. I like this Tamdhu much more than I like this Macallan Classic Cut, and in my neighborhood, it's a lot cheaper. I really prefer the Tamdhu over this Macallan Classic Cut. But Macallan, the way they're pitching themselves in terms of the market that they're trying to sell to, they're trying to come across as something that's more like a Rolex watch. Hence, they're going to charge a lot more, and there are people who are going to chase after it. But then here is the Highland Park Cask Strength. This is bottled at 63.3% alcohol by volume. Of course, they use a little bit of Orkney peat, which is a moderate amount of peat. Highland Park has really spicy cask, so this has a much more intensely spicy finish. But I love this whiskey, and in my neighborhood, I can get these for under 100 bucks, typically around 90 bucks. This is Tamdhu's toughest competition, but if you don't like peated whiskey, or you just want a nice, big, classic sherry cask without any peat, then I would say go for the Tamdhu. So that being said, what I'm going to give it in terms of score. It's classic. It has a nice development. It is a nice follow through. I like the mouth feel in terms of the texture, and I like the length of finish. I'm going to go like rate 89, 90 points. Let's go 90 points on this one. It's not overwhelmingly, it's not a big wow, it's not blowing my mind, because they're not doing anything that's necessarily distinctive and making themselves stand out from any other distillery. You know, when you try a Glenturret, and I'm becoming more and more just a fan of Glenturret, Glenturret really stands out with a very distinctive character in the way in which they're using bourbon and sherry cask with just that touch of peat. Obviously, I don't even have to say it. You already know what I'm thinking. Springbank, right? Springbank. Everybody's distillery that they love and hate at the same time. They love the whiskey. They hate that they can't get it, or that it's being sold for such high amounts out there on the retail or on the secondary, right? But Springbank has a very distinctive character, and there's nothing else like that on the market. So I would say with the one thing with Tamdhu, I mean, beautiful bottle. This is a bottle you want to display on a shelf. It looks like you just want a trophy. I like the shape. I like the cuts on the glass. I like the bottom, the way it stands out. The box is a little weird. I don't get I don't get the box. I would throw this away and just put this bottle on my shelf. I don't need the box. I mean, it's nice for showing off the bottle when it's in the box, but I don't. That's just a weird box. But the bottle is absolutely beautiful. Cork comes off really nice. No problems there. Beautiful classic label. I love the black and the gold. The nice, bold, clear, easy to read font of the Tamdhu in the middle of it. So the presentation is awesome. If you're looking for, and I'm recording this at Christmas time or just before Christmas, this would be an awesome gift, and relatively speaking, in the whiskey world, affordable in comparison to what else is out there. So if you want a beautiful presentation of a bottle, a classic sherry cask single malt for yourself or to give as a gift, I would highly recommend the Tamdhu. In fact, I'm going to say, if you are just looking for really high quality sherry cask whiskeys, Tamdhu, and this is my forecast, I think is going to become the distillery to beat. And if you're looking for beautiful presentation, as long as they don't start trying to pitch themselves as being like a Rolex watch or some overly expensive car or something you find in a fashion magazine, as long as they don't go that route with their marketing department, I think Tamdhu Distillery may be the one to keep an eye out for. And that's my 2 cents on the matter. So my hope is, I'm always, I get this feeling in my stomach. I'm just like, oh no, man, you raving about a bottle, and you're just gonna cause it to be, disappear off the shelves. But I gotta tell like it is. I think it's an absolutely superb whiskey, and I would say if you're a Macallan fan, and I'm not down in the Macallan in and of itself in terms of the whiskey, but I would say if you're a Macallan fan, this is one you're gonna want to check out. Another bottle that might be comparable would be the Aberlour Abudna. That's also a batch strength whiskey, but I like this one more than I do the Abudna. All right, that's it for this review. If you have subscribed to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you're not yet subscribed, you like watching my videos, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified for when I go live or post a new video. And until next time, Slanja. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.